Hi, welcome to Art Show. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me John Dowell. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm fine. And yourself?
Very good. I'm thrilled to have you on the show today. I've been looking
Yeah.
forward to this. And what I'll do first is I want to share a few images of yours for the people watching, so those people who aren't familiar with you get a sense of the kind of work that you do. So this is actually this series, these white painting series, this is how I was first introduced to your work. I saw one hanging in the Philly Museum down the street. And this is a whole series. So this is kind of earlier work for you. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's like from the mid '70s to the mid '90s, you know, and it was quite a progression, starting from my things dealing with time and dealing with trying to deal with space, and I even spent some time going back and forth to Merce Cunningham and John Cage's place in West Bay
Mm.
because I was interested. Merce choreographs, but he didn't choreograph in the sense like some choreographers, they do events. Merce did the space. He was kind of controlling how you move through that space, and that was very interesting to me. So in those white paintings in the beginning, I was like, really, I'm moving you in like a dance score, but going through the wind or going through snow, that kind of idea, really giving a sense about what time was about and how to activate it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really enjoyed the space that these create especially with the textures that you put within the
Yeah,
whites. And actually, it's not just texture; it's form within the white
right,
textures that you're doing. I
right.
really appreciated that. But the other marks that you're doing, these sort of hand gestural marks, where did they develop from?
Well, from a number of places. One was just movement, and that's one thing was movement, but they were also sort of very early on had a sense of like spirits in a way, and so I had this sense. So I try to do something and have this movement within a light because the light was very important. I just didn't want the mark sitting on a page and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So and they came from a number of different places there. Like I said, ideas about spirits and forms, and there were natural forms a lot that relate to like fish and birds and things like that. But I wanted to put them in such a way that the viewer decided what they were. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to decide. So I was really trying to keep, an, an abstraction going. That really was what was going.
When I first saw them, I was torn whether or not that they were a comment on either abstract expressionism or surrealism. But then I, of course, realized that they both use the same automatism, the same devices to get their marks. What
Well,
was it?
you hit it. That's both of them. You hit it.
Okay, good. All right, well then we'll just move on. And this I chose because this is one of your watercolors,
Right.
and
Well,
I really love the touch that you have with these. It's very delicate, but it's also bold at the same time.
the watercolors evolved through a lot of different ways because these were actually used as the scores for music.
Mm,
And so that sort of dictated a lot.
yeah.
For example, this piece is a piece I did even though he never performed it, for Neil Courtney. And
Mm-hmm.
he used to be the bassist for the double bass for the orchestra. But it was this idea of singing like him. And I imagine him playing up and down the scale and stuff. So ideas like that sort of dictated a form and structure that I put with it. But no, a number of these were like were scores that were performed by, I would have musicians and that we'd rehearse and everything. And at the projection for there was a projection for the audience to see.
Mm-hmm.
And next to it, and for the entire piece, and next to it would be details. And the details showed where we were in the performance of the piece. So if the piece was going up or going down to left or right, the audience could actually follow that. And that was like, so, and the watercolors developed for that. And of course, we didn't perform all the watercolors, but they were watercolors and drawings. And we went through 2 stages. They were drawn in India ink in black and white first, and then I'd go through all these drawings, and then I say, well, I'm going to watercolor that one because I'm going to pop the space, so I'm going to do something with it particularly well. So,
well, as soon as you said music, it changed it for me. So now I need to go back and look at these. And the other day you showed me some etchings that you have around this time period, and I can see those same sort of marks that are kind of going through. Yeah. And speaking of printmaking, so I chose, there's 2 hearts that I chose. There's this one, which I think this is a litho.
Yes, it is a lithograph, right.
And this one, I thought this piece was just stunning. It works on just the mark making of this one worked really well. But this one caught my eye. So if you aren't sold out of this one, I'll be shocked. This one does it for me.
Yeah. Well, I went through a period of making things with hearts, but the hearts were more than that. They were really making a double space. And that's the idea, like 2 different kinds of space and changing the density. That's the thing, and making things appear to float and to fly. And then also, you know, there are a lot of religious overtones there too, but at the same time, it was also this other, what I call raw element of trying to put it all together and stuff. So yeah.
I see those double interior spaces. I can see.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move over to your photography work, which I think a lot more people now know you, because that's currently what you're still doing some painting, but a lot of it's photography. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And this is your cotton series. So I love this one in particular, that just the geometry of the picture worked really well. And for me, what was funny is it took me quite a while before I realized that you had photographed the cotton in the sky. I didn't see that at first. I love that slow burn that you got going on there. That was really wonderful.
But this is, well, this is one of the pieces that appeared later on. The earlier pieces done with the cotton came about because I had dreams of my grandmother, and I had a show at the Telefair Museum in Savannah. I went and met a farmer, and I was introduced to cotton because I had never seen cotton or felt it or anything. But then this became sort of, well, this is a piece here. You got to go back to the other one.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, let me just try it. Well, what happened was that eventually I started doing a lot of, it became personal. It was like my ancestors, would I survive this? How would I survive? And stuff like this. But then in New York City, one afternoon, my wife and I were at the Historical Society, and we saw a book that said, you know, slavery in New York City. I said, slavery in New York City? I've been going down south, risking my life trying to photograph cotton. And you talking about slavery was up here. And so I found out about Seneca Village. And Seneca Village was the place that was an integrated area up on the Upper West Side that in 1825 or so, someone started selling some property to Black people. And so by 1857, it was quite established, a space over 300 residents and stuff. In fact, there was also an integrated church there.
Mm-hmm.
But the city shut it down and said that they condemned it, and not because there was something wrong with it, but they want to make Central Park.
Mm-hmm.
So what this is, I got a map and I photographed the actual spaces today at that time where this was the Union Church, where it actually was.
Mm-hmm.
So I photographed that, then I superimposed my idea or call about a church on top of that. So that's how, these are the things in Seneca Village. So that's how these came about. Now the next piece you said, this is a piece that really was me dealing with some of my grandmother's stories to me about her being lost in Cotton at 3. So I wanted to do that. So I spent a lot of time trying to find tall cotton, because cotton is only grown waist high. But I wanted to get it, and I found someone in Hobgood, North Carolina, a fellow named Dave Mayer, and he did have tall cotton, and I went down and photographed it. But this is an installation piece where people walk through it, and what the scale is, what I was trying to do, give the viewer the feeling that they were the height of a 3-year-old or 4-year-old. You walk through the cotton and stuff in detail. So that's what this piece is about. So did you ever,
so this is not cotton, this is corn.
It's corn, yeah.
Have you ever thought about doing a book for the cotton? Just because the explanation that you gives on these, the history behind and the creation of these pieces that you're making gives so much. It changes the image so much. I just want to encourage you to make a book to write all this stuff out.
Okay, all right.
So you got, this one was corn, and this I had to put in one of these guys because we showed at Allen's Lane. I showed this piece, and I just love this piece.
Yeah.
So how is this made for the people just watching?
Well, this is one of some of the first pieces I made by putting images together. What I did, there are different actually exposures and cut up and then put back together, assemblage in a sense. So this would be very much like a collage altogether. You know what I mean? And so put together, but it's just going shooting different exposures and then liking and putting them together with a sort of semblance of feeling that you want to get from it. So
what kind of cameras do you use?
Well, at that time out there, I was actually, I was out in Colorado stuff. I was out there with a 4x5. I mean, I look back at it now, man, it's absolutely insane carrying this equipment and stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. And this is Rittenhouse Square.
Yeah, it's home turf.
Yeah. And I got involved in Rittenhouse Square in the beginning because in my interest in trying to articulate space, I noticed that when there are no leaves on the trees, you can still look through and see the space. But when you have leaves, it just shuts it off. But normally, when we think about a space, we think about the perimeter of a space. We never think about, we walk through a space, you don't feel it. But I mean, if it happens to be real foggy, or if it's heavy rain or something like that, you do that. But normally you don't. And so it was the one place that I could be where I could see this, and that. But also, I like Rittenhouse Squares. We can keep going all day about stories about Rittenhouse Square.
Yeah, I still got other questions for you, so I don't want to linger too long. But I had to show. I thought this was a fantastic photo. This is Brooklyn, I believe.
But no.
Oh no, Harlem.
This is Harlem.
Yeah.
This is actually 125th Street. Yeah, in Harlem.
So this one is Harlem, and this one is also Harlem.
This is Harlem. This is Lenox. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
this guy with his pack store. It took me 3 or 4 trips back and forth
Oh yeah.
where he would let me take a photograph.
Well, you got it. You nailed it.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah,
was
well, no,
great.
he did. I mean, I bought a couple of hats and stuff in his round.
You got to grease the wheel. I got
Yeah,
it. And then
right.
this is the last picture. I just,
Yeah,
talking about the way you use digital work and combine the collage and then the cotton and then the space. I thought this was a great photo to end on. I
yeah.
love it.
Well, this dancer Kay was we met her one afternoon at 125th Street, right near uh, um, hmm, uh, Adam Clayton Powell Monument.
Mm,
And so this is drawing up there, but then I decided that, she needed some continuity. She was really calling the ancestors. So,
great.
I like the space.
That was a
Yeah.
great photo. So
Yeah.
I aside from your photos, I also have some questions for you as well that, I was thinking about
Okay.
what I'd like to ask you. And actually, I got 2 questions, one at the end, one at the beginning, that I ask a lot of artists because I love to know this. What was your first exposure to art? Like, can you remember your first memories of art itself?
All right. That's interesting because it's on 2 different levels.
Huh?
One is my brother drew uh, comic books. He just the Lone Ranger and all the kinds of any kind that he did. So I did what he did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Then in 2nd grade, uh, the teacher said, "Well, we want to do an interesting thing about Christmas, and we need this backdrop. Can y'all draw a backdrop?" I said, "Well, if you got a picture of it, I can do it." So I put this backdrop together.
That's
And
fantastic.
everybody loved it. They patted me on the back of my head, and I was through. That's how art started for me.
Really? And from then on, did you know
From then
from
on,
then that you were going to be an artist, or did it gradually develop?
it gradually. In 6th grade, a teacher named Mrs. Bocart got me connected to the School Art League,
Mm-hmm.
and I started going down to the Fleischers in
Okay.
the 6th grade, and that's when it really locked in.
Yay, Fleischer. Yeah.
Right.
Did when did photography enter your? Did you have access to a camera as a kid, or did it come later?
You know, I had a little access and I met some people back and forth. But the thing about the camera is completely different. I, at one point, was doing my white paintings and I needed to photograph the white paintings. So,
Huh?
it's pretty hard to show to somebody. So I tried to get some 8x10 transparencies
Uh-huh.
made, and they
Mm-hmm.
were like way back then. I mean, we're
Yep.
talking about they were like $80, and I said, "Well, I'm not dumb." So I went and got a used 8x10 camera,
Mhm.
and some people at Quaker Photo. I annoyed to death till I learned how to do it. So that was the first thing.
Uh-huh.
Then and I did a little bit of shooting with it, but not much. I remember once visiting a friend of mine up at Brown University, and I came out, and it was the big thing. I came out with my 8x10 and set it up, and the whole neighborhood came and watched me take
It's an event.
photographs. Yeah, right. So, but anyway, no, I went on and I'm doing my work, and then what happened was that I got involved in music, and I told you I was doing these performances with my and concerts using my artwork as the scores. But then at a certain point, the music started, my interest changed. And so I started thinking more about Quincy Jones and Oliver Nelson and Gerald Wilson. Well, that's city stuff. And I said, well, I'm not going to draw the city. And
Mhm.
so I'm going to photograph this. So I said, well, I went and bought, I had an 8x10. I said, that's ridiculous. So I went and got a used 4x5,
Mhm.
and I started shooting with a 4x5 and stuff with it. And so that came about And in the beginning, there's some prints that I made that was really a transition where I would photograph the city, and then I would have an ortho film made. I'd make the ortho film myself. With the ortho film, I can then expose and make a plate or one of the colors of the lithograph or the etching. And then I could draw different and add things. So this is me, like, I got the city there and I'm adding the solo parts to the pieces, drawing and stuff, and making a piece. So that's how it sort of evolves. And then at one point, you know, curator said to me, John, well, I don't want to tell you this, but maybe you should stop drawing and just shoot, because you shoot a little different. I said, you don't like my photographs? I mean you don't like my lithographs? Oh, no, John, we didn't say that. So, but it took me 2 years to make that, till I stopped it, because, of course, I don't believe anything anybody tells me. I'm headstrong.
Right. Yeah. Right. So I'm curious. So it's wonderful that you've got different tools that you then connect all together to tell your stories. And I was wondering, the works themselves that you do you consider your works to be in any way autobiographical, or does that play a part in it, or do you consider that your works like separate train of thought from your life?
They are and they aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, because you say like autobiographical. Well, at a certain point, there's certain pieces of music that I just completely, I mean, Archie Shepp's got this thing, Mama Too Tight. I did a bunch of big drawings on Mama Too Tight because that was just wonderful. You know what I mean? The fact that is it autobiographical? Yeah, well, I'm responding. You know, it's my response to different things like that. But no, I have not, except when it came to my grandmother, things, I have not been specifically autobiographical.
When you're making work, do you ever find at a point where you have an idea and you're working and it's not working and you rework the piece? Do you edit and change the work as you're creating it? Or have you ever discarded or destroyed a work?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Some people don't. Some people save it. Very precious.
Listen, I have been the one that we've opened up crates from some old stuff. I said, oh no. And I just started, and a friend of mine from New York was telling Danny Dawson, said, you can't do that, you can't. Yes, I can.
Yes,
he said,
can.
But you might be, I said, I don't care what they think, I decide first.
Right, exactly. You know, I have a friend of mine who's a woodworker, and when he destroys his pieces, he lights it on fire and then does a video of it. So, you know, I don't have a burn permit for my work, so I don't know. You tend to work in series, right? So you have your Cotton series, your Rittenhouse series. Do those series, do they overlap, or do you need to do one at a time?
You mean in terms of a creation time?
Yeah.
In terms of actually, yeah, well, I mean, I was shooting in Rittenhouse Square, but I would still stop and go down south and shoot Cotton. You know, and the period depends. I mean, I did a lot of work in Harlem a little bit around the time that I was doing Rittenhouse Square. They sort of feed off each other. The visuals sort of feed back and forth. Yeah.
Do you ever put a series to bed? Like, all right, I'm done. Or do you always leave it open in case you want to revisit?
Well, there has been bedtimes, you know, but then again, all it takes is another dream and it's up again.
Do dreams often play a role in your creation?
Sometimes,
your creative process, I want to say.
Yes.
Interesting. Curious to know, this is a question that I sometimes ask my interviewees. Do you have any studio rituals? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When you go into the studio to work, do you just go in and work, or are the things that you have to do to get to work? Do you have to have the music on? Do you have to have a half a sandwich? Do you have to clean?
Yeah,
Or
I
do you
mean,
just go?
well, the music is on, and Troy comes in, and I know him a little bit before we get started. And um, no, I have a, I have a ritual early in the morning now where I come in and I read through some spiritual things. I read
Mm,
through some spiritual things in the morning, poems, psalms, and stuff, uh, and I have a little quiet time
mm-hmm,
with my head, and then we start working. But it's usually connected to or related to what the projects are, what I'm going for.
mm-hmm,
You know, 'cause
mm-hmm,
sometimes I'm going through this, and sometimes it's you know, sometimes days it's hustle time. You know what I
mm-hmm,
mean? And
mm-hmm,
other days it's like I'm working on a project, and sometimes I'm doing new things, and I'm doing and like I'm working on a project right now, and I'm doing some things, and I um I stop and think, you know, am I talking to myself too much? You know, is this okay?
Never.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not possible.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Yeah,
your work is, you're talking to yourself in a
yeah,
way,
absolutely. Yeah,
right? So I don't think, yeah, there's never enough. Well, I like the idea that you said that, quiet time is really part of your ritual, the calming
yeah.
of your mind, the focusing. So some people are the exact opposite, they need they can't stand it. Um, so I've got one final question for you today. And this is a question I like to ask all people. It's a simple question. Sometimes it stumps the artists. Sometimes it's a piece of cake to answer it. But I'd love to hear the answer. So, simple question. What does making art do for you?
I'm real. I'm real. I'm more than my art, but through it, I'm real. I see the world. I see a lot of things. I think through it. Yes.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Great answer. A lot of the artists who answered that question, I have never had two people answer it in the same way, but in some way, everybody answers it in the same way. It still kind of means the same thing about how important it is and how valuable the arts are, how you live your life, through the lens of the arts. So it's just wonderful. That was a great answer. So John, I could definitely continue to sit here and talk to you all day about your work. And hopefully maybe we'll do a part 2 in a year from now or something like that. But I want to thank you very much for stopping by today and talking with me. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in today. I really appreciate you watching these videos. I hope that you watch the other videos in this art show series. I want to thank you and tell you that please like and share, and I'm sorry, subscribe to the Art Show channel. That helps us get more eyeballs to get these artists the exposure that they need. And so if you also have any questions, write in the comment section. You can ask questions. I can get them on to John. But thank you very much for watching today. And again, John, thank you very much for talking
And
with me
thank
today.
you.
I really
Thank you. My
appreciate it.
pleasure. It's good. It's fun.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Right. Right.